Okay, I think we'll begin. I see the numbers continue to climb. Just first of all, to preface for those who are viewing this on YouTube Live, this is a little different than the format that we would typically conduct our meetings. With the last presentation that we had, we maxed out at over 1,000 views, and with our capacity in Zoom, we would not have been able to accommodate all of the people who were interested in viewing the presentation, and we anticipate an even larger viewing audience this evening. So the YouTube Live platform enables us to deliver this presentation to as many people in our community who are interested in participating and watching. With regard to the upcoming presentations, we have another presentation tomorrow morning at 9. There were some individuals who weren't able to make this evening's presentation. Although this will be recorded, we will post this to our reopening website as soon as possible. Last time, what I wanted to share with you is that it took about 20 hours for us to process the video from the last YouTube session that we had. And that's really what took the bulk of the time in turning the video around to our school community. So we will absolutely turn this around as soon as we can. We understand that the community is interested in seeing the updates and really understanding some of the things we're doing so that you can frame your questions back to us. With regard to the presentations that are upcoming, we have another one tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The content, although this is a very fluid situation and it evolves minute by minute, I anticipate tomorrow morning's presentation at 9 a.m. will be very similar to the presentation given this evening. Of course, anything that I learn overnight, and I do learn a lot at all hours as I receive emails and I read different articles and just understand the complexity of the reopening further. And as our team understands the complexity of the reopening further, we bring that knowledge together and we'll certainly share that back with our community. With regard to tomorrow's presentation, however, at 9 a.m., just given the fact that it's 7 by the time this presentation ends, it'll be about 8 o'clock. I anticipate that not much new information will emerge. However, I encourage you to still come back on. That's why we're using the YouTube Live platform, so that we can have as many visitors and we welcome as many viewers as possible. We really want to keep you engaged and keep you informed. I sent out my most recent letter to the community last week to provide you just an update as to where we are with some of the frequently asked questions. We received a lot of questions in the document. Many pertained to the same 5 topics. I will go through that again this evening. I did share that in the letter that updated the community, and we'll talk about that again tonight. There is another presentation Thursday at 5 p.m. That would be the last presentation for this week. And then next week, I anticipate announcing some additional presentations because this is such a fluid situation. I'm holding weekly meetings with our faculty and staff to keep them updated as well so that they too have the most current information available. And once we have a schedule of presentations available for next week, I'll be sure to share that with you. I anticipate at least 1, most likely 2 presentations next week, and certainly the week after that and beyond. We'll continue the presentations until we can reopen our schools. With regard to this evening's presentation, I just wanted to provide you with a brief agenda with regard to the items we'll be focusing on. First of all, this whole reopening is about health and safety. So I would be remiss if I provided you an update on the reopening of schools without coming back to the measures on health and safety. We'll talk about the full remote learning model versus the hybrid model. We'll talk about supervised remote learning. So one of the items that I've been asked about is care for children on their remote learning days. So we have a really important announcement that we'll be sharing with the community a little later on in this presentation. We'll talk about COVID testing. We'll talk about contact tracing. Certainly those go to the health and safety measures within our district. And we'll talk about some of the questions and answers as well. I'm joined this evening by our wonderful Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Mrs. Lisa O'Shea. Mrs. O'Shea has been just the consummate partner and just a wonderful supporter of the work and a champion for children and a champion for our district. So Mrs. O'Shea, welcome this evening. And we will finish each other's sentences and answer each other's questions, and certainly share what we have both learned through the reopening process. So I appreciate Ms. O'Shea joining us. Our Director of Technology, Mrs. Forsberg, is also on the line. She's assisting along with Mrs. Burns with the production of tonight's YouTube live presentation. We will just begin with some of the health and safety measures. For those who have watched the previous video and for those who read the letter from last week, many of these are the same. The biggest difference that I will share with you is we have been able to secure an order for MERV 13 filtration in all of the air conditioners in the district. At the last session, you may recall that I wasn't able to say all of the air conditioning units would be fitted with MERV 13 filtration. Now I can say that. Now, there are some locations in the district that are not air conditioned. There are some small classrooms that are not air conditioned, some special area classrooms that are not air conditioned. We are looking at those. Our Director of Facilities has identified a list of spaces that are not air conditioned. They have the unit ventilators, and I'll speak to that momentarily, but they do not have air conditioning units at this point. We are looking to outfit those areas with air conditioning units. This was a phased approach that we were taking. We started with the classrooms, then we were going to move into some of the smaller instructional areas. COVID upended our spring last year and it threw off our timing, but we are getting back to that. And we're looking forward to introducing the MERV 13 filtration as well. With regard to the unit ventilators and the air conditioners, I'm getting a lot of questions about unit ventilators versus air conditioning. What's the difference? What do they do? Is this, can you explain it to us in a little more detail? And I absolutely can. So in our classrooms, there are devices called unit ventilators. And what unit ventilators do is they bring in fresh air from the outside, right? So schools have had to do this prior to COVID. It has become more integral since COVID. We're required to bring in, I believe the number is 15 to 16 cubic feet per minute of fresh air per occupant in the room. So we can do that under normal class size circumstances with the unit ventilators that we currently have. Now with a half occupied classroom, so if we're reducing the capacity, and I'll come back to that a little later on in the presentation, but if we're reducing capacity in the classroom, we're introducing much more fresh air into the classroom than is required by the state education department guidelines. So the unit ventilator's responsibility is to introduce fresh air into the space. That ventilator is filtered. It's not a MERV 13 filter, but it is a filtered introduction of air into the classroom from the outside. In addition to that, the vast majority of our classrooms in the district, the vast majority, have air conditioning units. Some of those air conditioners are window units. Some of the air conditioners are what's called a mini split system. Those are those devices that are mounted on the wall, and they're very quiet and highly efficient, and they're referred to as mini split systems. And then the third model of air conditioning in our district is a central air conditioning model. All three of those systems can be and will be outfitted with MERV 13 filtration. So we have the unit ventilators that will introduce fresh air into the classrooms. And then we have the air conditioning systems that will recirculate the air within the classroom, filtered through the MERV 13 filtration. And the importance of the MERV 13 filter is that it's believed and known to filter out virus particles from the air. So the unit ventilator is the fresh air. The air conditioner is recirculating the air within the classroom through the MERV 13 filter. So I wanted to clarify that. I did receive a few questions with regard to the difference of the two and what one does compared to the other. So I hope that that clarification is helpful in that regard. All of the other health and safety precautions are still in place. I do have to share that every school district in the state and in the country are going to many similar suppliers. So there are supply chain concerns that I think are very legitimate. So far, we haven't experienced those concerns, but we haven't received everything at this point. So that's something that we're mindful of. It's something that we're absolutely attentive to, and we're monitoring our vendors daily to get the status of our orders. So many things have been received. As I shared last time, 60,000 disposable masks are on our campus, and we certainly will be deploying those to the schools. And we have so many other items on order. So we look forward to receiving those so that we can safely reopen our schools. The next item that I wanted to share with you is the full remote versus the hybrid. I have had some really emotional conversations with some very conflicted parents about what to do for their children. They're conflicted because they would like their children to return to school. They understand the importance of the socialization. They understand that the virus transmission rates are low, but they're still not comfortable. And I understand that. And our entire team understands that. And we respect that, which is why we were a district right from the beginning that offered a full remote learning option for our students. We understand the concern. We empathize with that. And we empathize with the enormity of the decision that many parents are facing. This is a health and safety decision. This is not, most of my conversations with parents have not been about the model, the educational model. It's been about health and safety. Is it safe for their child to return to school? And I first want to share that we would not be offering an in-person model if we didn't believe it was safe. Is there a risk? Of course there is. There's always a risk. And I will be the first to tell you that with all of the steps that we've taken, I'll come back to the health and safety measures that the district has taken. Even with all of that, I could never promise you that your child won't bring COVID home. I could never do that. I would be disingenuous if I made that promise to you. And I think you've come to know of me that I will always be transparent and honest with you. There is a possibility that with 4,000 people on the campus at any given point through 5 school buildings, that someone does contract COVID. It is possible. I'm optimistic. I take a lot of pride in the 6-week ESY program that we conducted that was quite successful, that did not have any cases of COVID, either suspected or confirmed. And I commend our teachers in the program. I commend our students in the program. I commend Mr. Rosen, Ms. Almeida for their leadership in the program. I'm encouraged by that. And I'm pleased we were able to offer an in-person model to our students in the extended school year summer program, which just concluded this past Friday. But even with that said, I could never promise you that over a full school year, 180 days, 182 days, with so many people on our campus and all of the activities that our children are involved in outside of school, I could never promise you that COVID would never happen here. So I say this in light of all of the health and safety measures that we're taking, and all of which are very appropriate and really important. And it's what I would want for my own children. And many of you know I do send my own children to school here. And so I say that to you as a parent, I say that to you as superintendent of schools, and I say that as a resident of Yorktown. We are taking every single precautionary measure that we can take to provide the safest possible atmosphere. With that said, we understand concern. We understand a reluctance or a worry about returning your children to school. We offer a full remote model. That full remote model at the K-5 level will have a dedicated teacher teaching in the remote learning environment. Students will go through live synchronous learning, the math, the ELA instruction, the morning meetings. Those will be live and synchronous, and then we'll determine the component of the day that's asynchronous. Because having children at a computer for an entire school day is not something that our district is going to do. Having children on a computer for 7 hours or 8 hours a day doing schoolwork has consistently been proven as not best practice for children. So we will balance the synchronous with the asynchronous part. It will look different than the way it looked in March. And I think that's understandable when you're thrust into a model with a day's notice, and then when you're given a little time to prepare. I think it's understandable that the model would look a little different. So there will be a greater live synchronous component at the K-5 level. But it won't be a full day of live synchronous learning. I want to make sure I clarify that piece. With regard to the 6-12 level, students are going to follow through their academic schedule. They'll do that for a time. Then we're going to make a determination, maybe a month. I'm constantly asked, well, what is the date that we're going to make that determination that we're going to move from all live synchronous to maybe half is live and synchronous and the other half is asynchronous? And the reality is it's not an exact science. It would be premature to tell you that by September 30th, we are going to make that assessment. We may need more time beyond that to make that assessment. The important part of having children go through their synchronous schedule is the relationship building. So much of the work of teaching and learning is in the relationships. That's such an important point that I can't state enough, and I can't emphasize enough. We need the opportunity for those relationships to form, and we need that community of learners to form. Peer-to-peer, student to teacher. That's really important. That can't be defined by a specific deadline. So it may take a little longer. We may be able to do it more efficiently. We'll make a determination within a reasonable amount of time, approximately a month, to determine which classes remain live and synchronous, which classes move to asynchronous, because keeping children on their computer from 7:30 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon is not what we believe is in the best interest of a child. If you select the full remote learning, we are asking for a semester commitment. I do hope that it's understood the amount of work that goes into creating class placements and the amount of work that goes into configuring classes so that we have an appropriate balance within each of our classes, and also in a high school that offers such a robust program. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and it's not the most appropriate thing in the world to reconfigure schedules weekly. It creates a discontinuity for children. It creates a discontinuity for the class as a unit. It creates a discontinuity for the instruction that happens within the classroom. So what we're looking to do is have a semester-long commitment. Now, why a semester-long commitment? For a few reasons. Ultimately, many of our classes run on a semester basis. Also, as numbers change in and out, we need some time to be able to plan class lists and be able to make sure students are going to the best possible placement at any level, whether it's kindergarten or whether it's at the high school level. So if there is, one of the big questions I've been getting is there the ability to move from one model to the other prior to a semester, prior to the end of the semester? The short answer to that is yes. There will be a process to allow for that. So if someone begins remotely and is finding that there are some concerns and they can articulate those concerns to us, we'll review that, have the student come in for the hybrid model. And then the next question begs, well, what if I try the hybrid model and then I'm not happy with that? If that's not working and you'd like to go back to remote, we can do that. That decision will be final. I do want to communicate that there's only so many changes we can make. We want to be accommodating. We are flexible. I think we're demonstrating that we're accommodating and flexible. However, that has to be done within reason. So I share that. I share that as an answer to a question that's been asked quite frequently. With regard to the hybrid model, you're already familiar with the A-Day, B-Day model. Tuesdays and Thursdays will be day A, and B-Day will be on Wednesdays and Fridays. Mondays are fully or in September are going to be used for staff development. We'll be working with our faculty and staff in this new model. When you think about it, our faculty and staff are supporting in-person learning. They're supporting students at home. There's a remote piece. It's a very tall order, and providing our faculty and staff with some time to ensure that this is done well is really important for us. It's possible that the Mondays need to go beyond September. As I indicated, this is not something that will be prescribed. It's such a fluid situation, and we will respond to that fluidity by being flexible in our model. With regard to the remote learning days of the hybrid model, there will be a live synchronous component. There will be, and it will look a little bit different K-5 than it will 6-12. With K-5, there will be some interaction with some teachers and support teachers, and at 612, there will be some interaction with their teachers as well. We'll talk about how that looks at a later update specifically, but there will be a combination of live synchronous instruction and asynchronous instruction. So a student on the remote day of the hybrid model, so a student who reports to school on day A, which is last names A through L, on the B day when they're scheduled to learn remotely, there will be an expectation that at a specific time during the day or specific times during the day, the children are logging in to their class or to a teacher. So again, more information to come, but I did want to share that although it's the remote day, there still are synchronous expectations on that remote day. And again, it's a semester-long commitment. Couple of other questions that have come my way with regard to the full remote. As per the New York State Public High Schools Athletic Association, a student who is in a fully remote model is permitted to participate in interscholastic athletics. That is something that is allowed. That's different from being homeschooled, where you're disenrolling in the district and enrolling in a homeschooled program. That's an individual home instruction plan, and it's different than our fully remote model. I also wanted to clarify that. So students who are in our fully remote learning model may participate in interscholastic activities. Right now, there are so many rumors that are circulating with regard to the start date for athletics. I heard as recently as today that it could be at some point in August. However, as of right now, it's later in September, which is when the first season will begin. So if that changes, we'll certainly update our high school students on that. And another question that came my way was with regard to resources. What resources are going to be used in a fully remote? It's the same resources that we have in school. It's still the district curriculum. It's the district's programs that we're using and that we're accessing. With regard to supervised remote learning, one of the biggest questions that has come my way, is with regard to parents who have their child coming to school on Wednesdays and Fridays and are wondering what their options are for Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And that has been a real concern that we empathize with and that we understand. And what our district did was we took it upon ourselves to create a program that can assist families. Now, we're not licensed as childcare providers. That's not what the school does, and that's not what we do. However, we're going to start a program. We're meeting with some third-party organizations who are in town, who will then assume responsibility once they're licensed, once the childcare provider is licensed, this third-party organization is licensed. We anticipate housing this program at French Hill. While French Hill may not be equipped to be a school facility right now because of the upgrades that would be required to become school ready with the installation of smart boards and the technology that would be needed, we do believe that we can use that facility to support our community through their childcare needs and renting that facility to an outside organization. We believe we can approximately accommodate 100 students on the A days and another 100 students on the B days in that facility. It will be open to students in grades K through 6. So that's essentially ages 5 through 12. It will not be open to students who are in the fully remote model. The theory there being that if it's unsafe to come to school in a hybrid model, then certainly it's unsafe to go to the belief would be that it would be unsafe to go to any other congregate setting where children are gathering. So this would be open to students who are in the hybrid learning program on their remote days. Approximately 8 to 4, I've been speaking to different vendors about, or different third parties about this, agencies. I believe the fee will be somewhere in the $45 to $50 range. The district is not collecting the fee. Legally, the school district may not profit on this, and we may not lose on this. We may not profit. We're not a business. And the other part of this is we may not lose money because we may not gift taxpayer monies on this program. So whatever fee is ascribed to the program will be purely to cover the costs of the program. There will be daily health screenings. We will have the social distancing and the other safety measures noted in the reopening plan that we had that this organization will have to follow. So we anticipate that this program will be up and operational by the start of the school year. So that more to come on that, but I did want to share with our school community. I ask that you please not email on this at this point because I don't have any information beyond what I've just shared on this screen to provide you. This is what I know right now. I will know more for the Thursday update at 5 p.m. I'll be able to provide more. I will not know more by tomorrow morning on this program. In fact, we have meetings on the Supervised Remote Learning Center tomorrow afternoon. If you're interested in participating in staffing the program, if you would like to be part of working in this program to supervise our students in the remote learning center and ultimately to work with the third party, and to ultimately work with the third party organization that will assume responsibility of the center, there will be a link on our website as early as tomorrow to apply to work in the program. So specific information on the program is limited to what's on the screen. If you would like to work in the program, if there are students who are home from school who would like to be the college students who are recent graduates of college, or someone who is looking to participate in the program, they will undergo a vetting process. They will undergo quite a thorough vetting process. Fingerprinting will be required. And we would love to see if members of our community would like to participate and help us staff this. With 100 students, we're certainly looking at quite the number of staff to support our students on the remote day. So I share that with you. The fee that we will ascribe to the program will be to cover the costs of the program. They will not be payable they will not go to the district. They will go to the third party provider to cover their costs. And we're certainly keeping the expenses as low as we can because we understand the circumstances that are in our community, and we understand the circumstances that so many families are facing with regard to finding childcare and finding someone to support their children, get online and be part of the Google Meet. So we will have staff to help students to access their daily meets and to access their daily Zoom sessions and some of the asynchronous assignments that are there. More information will be available Thursday at 5 p.m. when I give the Thursday update that afternoon. As of this time, I don't have any additional information. And in terms of some of the fees and some of the times, the time may be extended if the third party decides that they want to extend it and offer an earlier option, a later option. We haven't identified the third party. Also, to register for the program, an email to me will not register you for the program. I just wanted to share that. We will certainly communicate the registration in a fair way, and we'll work with the third party organization to open up registration. But that's something that I just wanted to share. Many in our community have already secured their childcare plans for the fall, and we certainly understand that. This is a program that will be available. It's a larger scale program and another option. So I do want to share first and foremost that we've been working with Westchester County on the licensing. So the question is, why is Yorktown Central School District starting a program and then turning the program over? The reason we're starting the program is organizations that provide any kind of child service or child care must go through a licensing process. And that process may take time. And it certainly can take upwards of two months, maybe 3 months. It takes a little time for that to happen. We're working with Westchester County to try to expedite that process. And I'm hoping that that will come to fruition. But I understand also that families in our community may not be able to wait 3 months until the licensing is approved. So what we will do is we will start up the program and then we will work with the third party organization to be licensed in our facility, because they may be licensed down the street. They may be licensed at another location, but they're not licensed in our location, in this location, and the county requires that to to be the case. So we'll start a supervised remote learning center within our school district. We'll have that staffed again. There will be an application if you're interested in joining the staff. You can do that, and we would certainly welcome all qualified individuals who are interested in serving the program to be part of it. And more information will follow Thursday at 5. So I share that with you. With regard to COVID testing, I just wanted to share that I had a great conversation with Dr. Gupta over at AFC Urgent Care, and we spoke this morning about some of the COVID testing options that the district has. The New York State Education Department, there have been some conflicting messages that have emerged from different state agencies about COVID testing and who's responsible for COVID testing. The New York State Education Department has very clearly indicated that it's not for school districts to do the testing. We have to defer to the medical experts and to the doctors for the testing. So students who become symptomatic or who are advised to take a test may do so through their family physician. They may do so through AFC Urgent Care, through which the district has a really strong partnership. So we appreciate the partnership with Dr. Gupta and his team. And we look forward to them supporting us in any way possible. They will be also on site at the remote learning center to provide the health screenings at our remote learning center or the childcare program that some may refer to it as. They will be on site to do those screenings. That, of course, is factored into the cost. And the clinically diagnosed cases, that was the other question that I had received, is just can you explain more about a clinically diagnosed case of COVID? We have a wonderful medical director, and our medical director works for several school districts in the region and has been so accurate in his assessment of COVID, his understanding of COVID, and he and I actually spoke twice today to talk about some of the procedures and protocols that we're going to be following come September. And what we're doing is we're not necessarily waiting on a positive COVID test. Positive COVID tests can take anywhere from 2 days to return to, I've heard, upwards of 7 or 8 days to return. And in some anecdotal instances, I've heard even more. As a school, we don't have the luxury of waiting for a confirmed positive case before acting. We have to take a really aggressive stance on preventing the spread of COVID within our schools. So if we believe that the symptoms and signs point to COVID and there is nothing else explaining the symptoms, so for example, we're aware that strep throat is still available, the flu will come about. Those can be documented. Those can be confirmed. Test positive for flu, test positive for strep, test positive for an ear infection. Those are things that our medical director has shared can explain some of the symptoms. We will be erring on the side of caution, and if the medical director, and we will defer to the medical experts on this, if the medical director, in understanding the facts of the situation, believes that it is a case of COVID, we will diagnose that as a clinically positive case of COVID. And we will follow the procedures from there. We'll be in touch with the Westchester County Department of Health for their guidance. The state was terrific. Governor Cuomo mentioned today that if there is a case of COVID in the schools, the state will support the school districts, which is wonderful. And I'm so happy to hear that there will be outreach at the state level. So I look forward to more information on that, but we'll certainly be in communication with the Westchester County Department of Health. With regard to contact tracing, I want to share with our community the importance of contact tracing as well as the complexity of contact tracing. So as we become aware of either a clinically diagnosed case of COVID or a positive confirmation of COVID as a result of a test, we will be looking at with whom the student traveled to school, on the bus, which bus, who else was on the bus, where did those students go? We'll be looking at other modes of transportation. Did this person drive themselves and was isolated? Did they take a ride with someone else in the car. We'll be looking at transportation as a key factor. We'll be looking at classes. Which classes did the student attend? This is why the idea of cohorting is so important at the elementary level and even at the secondary level. But at the secondary level, we're limited to the extent to which we can cohort students because the students have such different schedules and they take such different courses. So the classes that the student has been in is so important. Co-curricular activities that the student participated in, whether on campus or off campus. Who did the student interact with at lunch? Also conversation with the student and the family to determine additional contacts. Maybe there's something that where we didn't see or didn't know. And we can certainly work with the family to notify those individuals. And certainly the Westchester County Department of Health and our district medical director will be integral in these decisions and in the contact tracing. And we will certainly notify parents who had potential exposure. So that is something that we did in the spring. That is something that we will continue to do this fall as if any cases come to light, we will certainly do that. With regard to the FAQs, and Mrs. O'Shea, you're welcome to help me at any point with some of these questions. The first was, is there any way to assist in childcare on remote days? We received a little over 500 questions in the Q&A document. That doesn't count some of the emails that have been received, although most of the questions have come from the Q&A, and that's where the answers in last week's letter and this evening's presentation have been derived. So the childcare piece, yes, there is a way to assist in the childcare on remote days, and we believe it's going to be through our partnership with a third party provider. Ms. O'Shea, was there anything, I'm not sure if I'd left anything out on the childcare, the remote learning, supervised remote learning center?
No, I think you were very comprehensive in outlining what that's going to look like for what we know as of today. I think that we will have people available to assist students with their remote learning instruction on those days, but we're still working through the kinks, what that will look like specifically.
Absolutely. And that assistance will most likely be in the form of just tech support to get on. I don't expect, so for those who are interested in applying, you don't have to be an expert in the mathematics curriculum or in the ELA curriculum. What we will most likely require your support in is obviously the safe supervision, ensuring that all of the health and safety protocols are followed. That's a non-negotiable. And then certainly assisting students to log in to their Zoom or their Google Meet or whatever platform they're working on that given day. So that is something that we know right now, but again, this continues to evolve. With regard to students switching between remote and hybrid learning models, we talked about that a little earlier in the presentation.
I can jump on it for questions 3 and 4, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I know that parents have been emailing the administrators looking for specifics on what would the remote learning days look like, what would the schedule be for hybrid, whether it's in person or the day that they are doing their virtual learning. So although we don't have very clear specifics, we have an outline of what will happen. And as Dr. Hattar said, it'll be combinations of synchronous and asynchronous instruction. Our building administrators, the principals and the assistant principals, have been working tirelessly to outline what that will look like. And we have come up with some very good models of this instruction. They are working through scheduling, instructional conflicts that we might come upon. We're looking at who will be teaching within each of those models and how much time we'll be allocating to synchronous versus asynchronous. And at this point, we're really taking into account how the developmental level of the student will play into how we outline those days. So there is more information to come on the specifics, but I do want you to know that it has been something that has been on the forefront of our planning, from building level meetings to district meetings. And then when I look at question number 4, why can't we open in a full in-person model? And I did see that on the list of questions. And there are several districts that are bringing students in, all students at certain grade levels. We don't have the capacity to bring in students and maintain 6 feet distance. Our buildings are at a higher capacity than some of our neighboring districts. It may be confusing when we say, well, why are we doing a remote learning center? You're bringing more students in that way, but they will be then separated and distance in French Hill, whereas we can't do that with our full 500 students at elementary, 900 at the middle school, and 11 to 1200 at the high school. So that is why we can't do a full in-person model. If we could, we would. We want all our students back. But I do believe the planning that we're doing for the remote, fully remote and the hybrid model, the instruction will be comprehensive, and the instruction will include all of the essential learnings we're responsible for under the New York State standards. So we are doing a lot of behind the scenes work, and I know it's frustrating as parents not to know exactly how many minutes of VLA I'm going to have, who's going to teach math at this time in this model. We are taking our time so we get it right for everyone.
And Ms. O'Shea, I think you identified the next FAQ, which is if you can staff remote learning at French Hill, why can't we bring students in at French Hill? We have very limited capacity. When you think about 100 students, first of all, it will take a lot to get the building up to a school level, school-ready level. So that's one piece. But we can accommodate maybe 100 students at French Hill. That does not really impact. When you think about 500 students in our buildings, that's not really changing too much of our circumstance. But also, the cost here, we're doing this for a very finite amount of time. This is not something that we can sustain as a school district. We're helping providers to get licensed in our facility, and then we're going to be turning the program over to providers, and they will continue to collect the fees and pay for the staff, because our district just does not have the staff, and the investments that we've made in PPE and the investments that we've made in some of the other protective measures in the school district have really been quite prohibitive in terms of looking at other needs that we might have and other financial commitments that we can make. With regard to question 5, health and safety on the school bus. First of all, Friday evening, the board accepted a contractor to take over the contract for our school, our transportation, our bus transportation in the district. Total Transportation is going to be the bus company that will take over for Bauman. As you may know, Bauman Bus has gone out of business and they're no longer operational. We have had some wonderful conversations with Total Transportation, and we're really confident that they will be able to support our students and transport them in the safest possible manner. They do work in another school district locally in the Northern Westchester region, and we have heard some really positive feedback from their operations. So with regard to bus transportation, I spoke to the COO of Total Transportation, and he shared with me the safety protocols. It's everything that the New York State Education Department is requiring transportation companies to do. So that's the daily disinfection of the space. That is the disinfection of high touch surfaces on the bus. So that's essentially the handrails, the seat backs the students walk through. At times they touch the backs of the seats. So that will be disinfected after each run. So it's a full disinfection of the bus daily, but after each of the bus runs, and we have multiple runs in the morning, multiple runs in the afternoon, after each run, the high touch surfaces will be disinfected. The drivers on the bus will be required to wear masks and gloves, and those buses that have monitors on them will also be required to wear masks and gloves. Masks are required on the school bus. They're required in school. We have spoken about that, so I don't think there's a need to revisit that for this presentation. With regard to the next question, is there a chance that we do not reopen on time? Everything is a possibility. I received that question quite often today, and I received that question on Friday as well. Is there a chance that we don't open on time? That's possible. There are some things that we're looking at. We're looking at supply chain. Can we get all of the items that we ordered? I promised our community and our faculty and staff MERV 13 filtration. That was part of our plan that was submitted to the State Education Department and to the Department of Health when we submitted our final plan. That is something that we must do as part of our approved plan. And if there's a disruption in the supply chain, that's something that would require us to delay the opening. The barriers we have put up, that we were going to put polycarbonate barriers in classrooms where social distancing is not feasible. We have some small classrooms in some parts of our building. Those are important to have. So we're monitoring that. Could that impact our opening? It could. We're also looking at accommodations for staff. I just learned that we've had several staff who have requested accommodations for medical reasons, and they're very real and something that we're deeply sensitive to. So we need to look at the staffing component as well. So that's something that we certainly understand and we're looking at. And the COVID circumstances changes every day. It really does change every day. I learn something new every day. In fact, I learn multiple things every day. So we're going to continue to monitor the situation. We are pleased that we're going to have the Remote Learning Center operational come the start of the school year, whenever that point may be. But we will have that. We do have that center operational, and that's something that I'm pleased to know, and I'm pleased that even if the school year is a little delayed for whatever reason, for one of the thousand circumstances that have come across my desk today alone, I'm pleased to know that we'll be able to provide that support to our students and to our families who may need it. With regard to when will the video be posted, and I apologize, I omitted the question mark at the end. That'll be up in the finished presentation. With regard to when the video will be posted, it does take some time for us to configure the video, to have it posted to our website. Last time it took about 20 hours. We're mindful of that, so we absolutely will get this up as soon as possible. The deadline for submitting the full remote option is tomorrow night before midnight. Once the clock strikes midnight, I look forward to going in and looking in more detail at the enrollment numbers. At this point, we do have several hundred students who have registered for the full remote option, and I anticipate that number climbing. And we appreciate and respect the decision that's made, and we understand that everyone has their own considerations and their own rationale and reasoning for making the decision, and we respect that, and we absolutely understand that. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. With that said, Mrs. O'Shea, any final words before we close out this evening's presentation to the community?
So in terms of thinking about moving forward into the fall, and parents have lots of decisions to make, and we recognize that, and we sympathize with the uncertainty that everyone is feeling. I did want to share that our teachers have been engaged in professional development since this all started in March, thanks to Ms. Forsberg, Ms. Burns, and some of our other consultants, really structured on how to better utilize our technology in the remote world. We have had so much professional development that has been well attended by our teachers all through the summer. Our teachers have actually also sought out professional development on their own. We are looking to have our teachers in the best possible situation to help our students. And so they are learning about how to bounce between synchronous and asynchronous instruction, how to develop online lessons, how to develop relationships within the virtual world with students, with families. So we are very active, and our teachers are very active because they want what's best for our students moving forward. And however this might look for the individual student, we are taking time to look at how we're going to support the social emotional needs of our students, the unique needs of our special education learners, our ENL learners, and how we can best position ourselves to have our students meet their instructional goals. Part of that process is also looking at what resources do we need instructionally for teachers and students to utilize. So we are looking at curriculum resources that would be beneficial in an online format. In addition, for those of you who need additional, if you need technology or you do not have a device at home or for your student, there is a link on our website under the reopening page where you can request a device for the 2021 school year, or even connectivity if you're struggling with that. If you register, then we'll be in touch with how to hand out the devices. So lots of good things happening, lots of forward movement, and lots of things that we're still very cognizant of and working through. So we thank you for your patience, and please know that we are, and our teachers are, very much invested in making this a successful year for our students moving forward.
And Ms. Soche, I echo your compliments of our teachers. They have been working extremely hard, and I'm sure you'll echo my compliments of our principals. Our principals and assistant principals have just been relentless in their effort for the safe reopening. They have worked around the clock, nonstop, to ensure that some of these really important day-to-day questions are being answered. And we're working through the answers, and we have a few weeks until we welcome our students back. And the questions are good, and we understand the questions, and I truly appreciate our leadership team. I appreciate our school principals, the assistant principals in our building, certainly our teachers, for all of the work that they have done in preparing to welcome our students back in the safest possible atmosphere. So I think that will conclude our presentation for this evening. I hope that you took away some really important things. I also hope that our commitment to your children and to our community is evident in this presentation, or through this presentation. These are tough times. I've said this day in and day out. It's uncertain, it's emotional, it's stressful, it's anxiety producing. There are just so many moving parts and so many things to be prepared for and to account for. And in our goal in trying to find all of the answers, I think we have to acknowledge what we know and acknowledge what we don't know. And there are things that we don't know and that we're learning and that we will be learning and we'll find out. This is something that we are committed to. There's such an important thing to be said for the socialization of our students, for them to be able to feel like children again. I generally don't bring it back to my own children, but I think about a child just being able to be a child and being able to go out and play, being able to come to school and be able to be a child again and understand what it is to be normal again. What does that mean? And I think it's our responsibility, to the best of our ability, to restore that for children. They deserve that. And as I think about your children, I think about my own children, and I say, what role can the schools play in doing that? So know that you have my commitment, you have Ms. Soche's commitment, you have our entire team's commitment. We're going to do what's safe. We're going to do what's responsible. Our plan is to reopen safely. That has always been our plan. It's not about if, but it's about when. And that's something that we're working through. And I will know more information. We have conversations with our suppliers coming up. We have conversations with our medical director coming up. But I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your trust. And